All right, Florida State football fans, this is your time. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, at 7 o'clock on Wednesday night. And I know that it's only been 6 weeks now, but I think you know the drill. This is the place to be. Lock it in every Wednesday night, 7 o'clock Eastern time. If you want to catch us live, obviously the video after our fine discussion here for the next 50 minutes or so, we'll process and post. And so you can catch us anytime. So if you miss it live, no fear, no issues. Calm down. You can catch the replay, but you don't get to dive into the live chat room and shake things up with the rest of the Florida State and college football fans. We will certainly have Miami and Florida fans in particular chime in, so beware. We got Jason Parker on the line with us as well. He is 6 for 6 in his appearances here from Chop Chat. Jason, tonight.
I mean, we ran off everyone else, Big Game James, Logan. I think Logan's afraid after the way we ended last week with the coaches argument. I think he's a little scared right now.
Yeah, he kind of stood back and just kind of let us flail away at each other. And Big Game James, I don't know that there's a hot spot that he can find in his car that's going to hold up long enough.
We started to GoFundMe to get him some Wi-Fi or something in his house. I don't know what's going on there. But you know what? I got you. It is July 3rd. I'm here for you.
You have broad, big shoulders, Jason.
I do.
You do. Figuratively.
Absolutely.
All right. Yes. So for anybody who missed last week's discussion/debate, we were running through ACC coaches rankings. And so Jason had pointed out the previous week that Willie Taggart was listed by, I believe it was CBS.
CBS Sports, yes.
To be much too low.
And you have
to believe that there could be another imbecile out there who would rank Willie Taggart that low. And
what crazy person would put him at 12th? I don't understand. Who would do such a thing?
And then here I am, right in line with CBS Sports for one of the few times probably. And so I don't know that we have any other ground to cover here in regards to the Willie Taggart placing on my list. So I explained again that one of my tenets in ranking these the coaches in the various conferences, and I have found in recent years, maybe not necessarily this year, the ACC to be the most difficult conference to rank coaches, in that I believe that there is less discrepancy or difference or gap between the coaches than I find in the other conferences, where I see more of a hierarchy and then down the line, where in the ACC, other than the obvious, I've not seen that in recent years.
And I think it also has something to do with the fact, and we've talked about this in previous weeks, and I'm sure we'll talk about it as we get closer to the season. The ACC right now does look like, and I'll admit this as an FSU grad, as somebody who covers the Noles, it's Clemson and in football, the 13 Dwarfs. I can understand how it looks that way. Now, if you do a deep dive into the conference, you can give teams like NC State, teams like Virginia, even as much as I hate to say it, a team like Miami credit over the past couple of years. But that being said, on the surface, it's Dabo. It's a few other guys that college football insiders like you and like me might know, but to the average person, people are going to know Nick Saban. People are going to know, to an extent, Kirby Smart. They're going to know Dan Mullen because the names are big. They're big produced names. Obviously, the SEC has their own network. Will that help when the ACC gets their network in a month? Who knows? But it's just one of those things. And I think just what we talked about as far as with Willie, and you even admitted that you made your list at the end of last year. There's been, there still is the constant criticism of Willie. You've got trolls on different cable sports networks who make comments about him and whatnot. It's even happened in the last week. I think that once this season goes on, and I think once FSU has an 8-win season, a 9-win season in 2019, things will calm down immensely as far as the criticism of Willie Taggart.
So I ranked Willie Taggart at number 12 in line with CBS Sports. So in response to our video, there are a number of people, in addition to the people that commented in the live chat while I was giving my analysis and you were responding, that responded to the no call-ins, please. Thank you very much. So there were a number of people that responded to the video once it posted during the course of the week that pointed out that, okay, Willie Taggart went 5-7. Jimbo Fisher went 6-6 the year before. Now, how do you make that distinguishing?
Jimbo Fisher went 5-6. Let's call it what it is. Jimbo Fisher did have a losing season in his time. For everyone who talks about how great he is at Texas A&M, he had a losing season before he bailed. Let's call it. Odell Higgins won those final 2 games. Jimbo Fisher led FSU to a losing season in his final season.
Okay, well, he was given credit as the head coach for the wins, and he finished 7-6. But in the regular season, he was 6-6. That's the official record. You know the narrative that he bailed out, and that was it, and he did nothing else the last few weeks of the season, and maybe a little else prior to the season or prior to those final few games after the Alabama loss. Okay, my point in all of that, in addition to the flat out record comparison, which is of course comparable 6-6, 5-7, is that if you go through the 2017 Florida State season and the competitive level in which the team played at every week, it was much higher, drastically higher than it was this past season. Those two performances through 12 games aren't comparable.
I understand where you're coming from, and the more I get where the logic is with that. My comeback to that would be, just using an example, the year before, the 2016 season, Florida State finished the year 10-3. That being said, a 1-point win over Miami, a 1-point win over Michigan in the Orange Bowl, a 4-point win over NC State. So there's 3 wins right there by a combined 6 points. You have come back from a 28-6 deficit in the opener against Ole Miss. So there's an argument right there that you are an epic, humongous comeback in the opener and 6 points away from, I believe that'd be 9-3. So let's say worst case scenario, you lose to Ole Miss, you lose to NC State, you lose to Miami. You're 6-6 right there. So that's why I think the growing criticism and the growing realization that this was not a one-time thing. 2018 was not a one-time thing for the Florida State Seminoles. 2018 was not because Willie Taggart, to hear the critics, to hear the naysayers, oh, he can't handle it. He took a bad situation. Should they have probably gone 5-7? No, absolutely not. Should they have beat Miami and gone 6-6 at the worst and gone to a bowl game? Absolutely. That being said, when you look at everything as a whole and you look into a deep dive into that team, to put everything on Willie Taggart would be, and I'm not saying to you, Mark Rogers, voice of college football. Yes, you said you liked it last week, so we're going to do it every time.
I'll take that every time. Absolutely, I will.
So I'm going to say it again, Mark Rogers TV, voice of college football. To do just a off the record alone, to me, I feel is an irresponsible thing. And it's an easier thing to do. It's easy to do it like that, but it takes a deep dive to realize, oh, wait, this wasn't the whole story.
So the losses that particular season are coming back into play as I look at the game log. That disaster at Louisville, in which Lamar Jackson's given a ton of credit for that win at Louisville 63-20, but it was actually the Louisville defense that played an exceptional game. And that was just a disaster. Wasn't it like 35-0 like that? In that game. So that was one loss in that 2016 season, the first loss of the season in game 3. They could have easily beat North Carolina. Now that shouldn't be given as a big credit that they beat North Carolina, or would have, but they lost on a last-second field goal, or it was a last-second field goal miss.
It was the last second made by
yes.
North Carolina.
And that was a talented offense at North Carolina with Ryan Switzer and Mitchell Trubisky and so forth, Elijah Hood and those guys. So they were a good team, a decent team. But yes, Florida State should beat North Carolina. Those two versions of those programs in Tallahassee. So that was a loss, but they could have won. While you're talking about could be losses, I'm talking about could be wins. Clemson, the national champions, 37-34.
And FSU was winning that game. FSU was winning that game in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, they could have had that game. But you look, even the year before, 2015, FSU lost to arguably, and we've talked about this, arguably the worst loss of the Jimbo Fisher era in Tallahassee to a bad Georgia Tech team. Yes, it was on a blocked field goal return to a touchdown, but that was a Georgia Tech team who I believe, and I could be wrong.
They went 3-9.
Right, they went 3-9 that year, and Florida State was playing horribly And Florida State came into that game 6-0. They had just blown out Louisville the week before, beaten Miami the week before that. It came in 6-0, came in a top 10 team, and laid an egg against arguably I'll use the word horrible Georgia Tech team that season. So to sit here, that's what I'm saying when I say people go after Willie, and people in both the media world, sports media world, and just general fans who want to blame it all on Willie. It's almost like starting in 2014, you see all these close wins, and there starts to be more and more close wins, and then you point out the North Carolina loss, the Georgia Tech loss, the 2017 season, how the losses start to pile up. This was a Jimbo Fisher, the end of the Jimbo Fisher era. I'd say the last 3 seasons of it were the beginnings of a disaster in Tallahassee.
All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. This is your Florida State Seminoles live show each and every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock Eastern time. So don't be selfish. Just don't take this as your own. Invite your family, your friends, your Florida State fans, college football fans. If you'll notice in the live chat, there are fans of all sorts of teams that check us out each and every Wednesday night. So bring more in. We would love to crank up the total too. Let's get to 1,000 by the beginning of the season. My aim is high.
Do it.
We get a couple thousand views by the time it sits there for a week, but I'm talking about live while we're here getting ready for Boise State, and we will preview that game. There was a number of requests this week to say, hey, preview Boise State. We will break that down, believe me, for weeks. We will do that once we get into August camp. Let's do that.
We also thank God that we're less than 2 months to go till college football season. I believe. Can we say that real quick?
Again, it's a double-edged sword for me. I say this every time it's brought up about I can't wait to get to football season. Well, I like the summer. So, yes, I love football as much as anybody out there. Believe me, I do.
You can have the summer. I will take the football season.
I know you will. I'll take the first half of the fall season here in Connecticut. Absolutely. I'll take it until about the first or second week of October, typically. That 2017 team, just to wrap up the synopsis, they did have to play Alabama in a neutral site game, and it was a 24-7 final, but it was a game in doubt into the fourth quarter. They lost to North Carolina State, as you well remember, the next week by 6 points. And again, the other point I was making to the detractors commenting back to me in defense of Willie Taggart and taking shots at Jimbo Fisher's 6-16 the year before, I let them know, Jimbo had DeAndre Francois, who was coming off a fine sophomore season, ready to go, or a freshman season, ready to go, coming off the Orange Bowl win, and boom, he did have his quarterback taken away from him in game 1 and had to go with a guy that was not ready as a freshman in James Blackman. So let's understand that as well.
And I've talked about this with several FSU. So we'll be positive for one moment. Okay, let's say DeAndre Francois does not get hurt. And what I'm about to say is not an attack towards James Blackman, because I think he will do a good job this year, in his redshirt sophomore season, third year in school, second year as the starter for this team. If DeAndre Francois does not get hurt against Alabama, out of the 5 losses left that FSU had in that regular season, NC State, Miami, Louisville, Boston College, and Clemson, I think you have a legitimate argument that Florida State could have won 4 of those games. I think he beats NC State. This is, once again, best case scenario. The sky is blue and perfect and rainbows and unicorns and everything. I think they beat NC State that year with DeAndre Francois. I think they beat Miami. I think they beat Louisville. And I'm going to say it. I think they beat Clemson that year because, once again, when people talk about the Clemson dominance over FSU, and Clemson killed FSU last year, there's no sugarcoating that. The 3 years before, Florida State was tied in the fourth quarter against Clemson in 2015, had the lead in the fourth quarter against Clemson in 2016, and was down by 3 points with 5 minutes to go and had the ball against Clemson in 2017. The 2017 version, there were plenty of mistakes that were made by Blackman, by that FSU offense in that game. Are those same mistakes made with Francois? I don't think so. So the argument there could be, is FSU a 9-win, 10-win team in 2017? Does that keep Jimbo Fisher around for the 2018 season, or does he take the $75 million? That's why I'm saying it's a lot easier for us to look back and say, well, what happened if A happens, then B happens, and C happens. The bottom line is FSU fans can't go back. The 2013 team is not coming back. The detractors, the haters on Willie Taggart need to realize that what took place last season was years in the making. It was a 3-year slippery slope that led to what happened last season.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. This is your Florida State Seminoles live show every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock Eastern time. So we appreciate everyone on the live chat. I will get to it in just a second. As soon as I throw something at Jason and he expounds for a few minutes, I can expounds. Are you able to do that for us, Jason?
I think I can do that for you. I can give you 5 minutes of spiel.
And I will come up with so leave your comments and questions. Not that I can get to everyone, but leave your comments and questions in the live chat, and we will get to those. So if I run through the rest of my ACC coaches rankings, after Willie at 12, then I go up to Dave Doran, who I'm not as impressed with as many people. Basically, North Carolina State, he's recruited well. He's had some teams over the last couple of years that appeared to have a shot preseason to take a shot at Clemson and have been in that game, other than the first Clemson national championship run in 2016, where NC State had the kicker make the kick, they would have beaten Clemson on the road, 8-5, 7-6, 7-6, 9-4, 9-4. That's what I expect out of NC State, and many of those records have been puffed up by bad, weak non-conference opponents. So I just don't see it with Dave Doran. I think his teams have been unprepared and have been outclassed in big games, and they just haven't gotten over the hump. They've beaten everyone that they should for the most part, and they've taken advantage of bad non-conference scheduling. Pat Narduzzi, I have at 10. I think people would be surprised with this statistic. Pat Narduzzi and Pitt are 20-12 in the ACC since 2015. That's his ACC record, 20-12. Only Miami is better at 21-11. Despite the 7 losses last year, they went 6-2 in the conference.
I did not realize that. That's why you're Mark Rogers TV, voice of college football.
You gotta find this stuff. He's 28-24 overall, but again, winning record like a plus 65% winning percentage. But the defense, you would expect him to master the defense there. That's how he got the job, because at Michigan State, he was a guru, and the Pitt defense has not been good. He's 0-3 in bowl games. Steve Adazio, I've got at number 9. He's cranked out a lot of 7-6 seasons, 7-5 this past year because they didn't play the bowl game. Had the one down year, but basically 7-6 5 times in 6 years. So you know what you get with Boston College, and the recruiting classes are not good there. He makes them work. Obviously, they fit what he does, but athletically, they're not. He knows what he's doing, though. He knows the identity of his program, and he drives it home with the stout defense in the run game.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. We've talked about this off the air before. He is someone who works very good with what he has. He knows that, he knows that you're at Boston College. You're at a decent program, but you're not a team that is going to be competing for many national titles. He does very well with what he has, and he's done a very good job about building Boston College, what I would use the term a respectable program. I would definitely use the term respectable when I talk about Boston College. And to touch on Dave Doran for 1 second before you continue with your list, the thing that got me last year was when people were saying why, James Blackman should start over DeAndre Francois towards the end of the year. And they point out, he threw for 400 yards against NC State. NC State finished, I believe it was 117th last year in pass defense, which boggles my mind because I will agree with you there. On paper, when Dave Doran came in, it was, NC State's going to be a team that's going to compete as one of the better teams in the division. I think the best they've done since he's been there, I want to say, is 3rd in the Atlantic Division. So there's going to come a point where he is going to have to, do his job, or they are going to have to move on at NC State. I think this is going to be a huge year for him. They lost some key components from last year, but if it's a 6-6 season, regular season, 6-6, 7-5, that could be the hottest seat in the ACC.
His conference record is 20-28. And for most of that time, Wake Forest has been marginal. Before they rose to respectability here in the last 3 years, they were awful. Syracuse has been awful up until this past season. So he's had some teams to beat up on, and still he's 20-28 in the conference. You should go 500 at NC State in conference play.
Oh, I would agree. That's what boggles it with it is, and you hit the nail on the head. Now they start off the year with East Carolina. They start off the year with East Carolina, then they play Western Carolina. So you figure you're 2-0 there, then you got to go play at West Virginia. Then you got Ball State at home. So yeah, you made the point. It's kind of a subpar, non-conference slate. They'll probably get annihilated by West Virginia. Just throwing that out there. And then you start off with an ACC slate where they come to Tallahassee and then they play at Syracuse. So it's one of those things, are you a 3-3 team? Then all of a sudden you're a 3-3 team with Clemson left on the schedule. You go to Boston College, to Wake Forest, and if North Carolina has people who are on the Mac Brown train, could that be a losing season in Raleigh this year?
Their non-conference schedule last year was James Madison, Georgia State, East Carolina, and Marshall.
Listen, my ex-wife is from Northern Virginia. Don't mess with the Dukes of James Madison, okay? They're the Fighting Dukes.
They've won national championships, haven't they?
They've won more national titles than FSU recently, yes.
Okay. Number 8, Dino Babers. Now, people tend to rate him higher. One season. I want to see more. And it was a good season. They were the 2nd seed in the ACC. They earned that, but it was a down ACC. They took advantage. Did they beat any really good teams? The best team that Syracuse beat last year was the aforementioned Wolfpack of North Carolina State. That was the best win that they had in the regular season last year at 9-3. They were fortunate not to run into West Virginia's 4 or 5 best offensive players. No Will Greer, 2 best wide receivers, left tackle that went to the NFL, all didn't play the bowl game. So they still have to go out there and play, and credit them with a win, but it's a bit, I take those things into consideration. So 4-8, 4-8, 10-3. Great, Dino Babers. Nice job. It's a difficult place to win. You're in the North. You have okay talent in New York and New Jersey, but that's about all you can draw from unless you want to take the leftovers from Florida, which he's done. So it's a difficult place like Boston College to win. So I would expect if Dino Babers can consistently go 7-5, 8-4, a down year would be 5 or 6 wins, and then a 9-3. I would give him a lot of credit for that.
And I think that they will go down one slot, I guess you will, this year. I don't think they're a double-digit win team this season. I agree with you. I think it was a very good year. I ranked them a little bit higher on my list because I was impressed with what they did. I'll disagree with you a little bit and call me a homer. I think their biggest win was not just beating FSU, but having a dominating second half against FSU, because I think that was the game that, on paper, before the game, FSU struggled in the opener against Virginia Tech. They were supposed to go to Syracuse, handle their business, and Syracuse both shut FSU out in the first half and then absolutely dominated in the second half. And I think that was where people kind of realized, oh, wait, Syracuse that's a decent team, because we didn't see how the season was going to play out yet for FSU. So I would maybe say that was probably a bigger win, because by the time they played NC State, they had already had some respectability. The Florida State big win kind of put Syracuse on the map last season.
So Jason, I don't disagree with you. You're going the thinking route, which I guess I didn't take the time to do that. But basically, I was just going the cold hard facts. NC State had the best record of the best team that they beat on the schedule. But yes, in regards to brand and the setup for the rest of the season, it was still early. They were still trying to figure things out, and who are we, and confidence and all that factoring in. Beating Florida State and really taking out the Seminoles. So once they hit sometime in the second quarter, halftime, I think it was a fairly close game at that point, but 30-7. Biggest win if you take it into context. 9-4 NC State, best win on paper. Justin Fuente, I have at number 7. He was largely disappointing, obviously, this last year. That's the first losing season at Virginia Tech in forever, close to 30 years. I thought it was a really good hire. I also look at the Memphis, so I'm grading there's if you could almost put it on a scale or a weighted system, sure. I'm taking more into account of what happened in 2018, 17, 16, and it dissipates as you go backwards. But I'm still going to credit him with turning around Memphis, getting to conference championships games there, and then going to Virginia Tech. He goes to an ACC championship game, and sure, he was playing with Frank Beamer's team, but Frank Beamer wasn't going to ACC championship games recently, and he went there and he played a Clemson team that was the national championship team in the ACC title game, 45-37, really good game. Was in the game. Yeah, they had the one last year was a similar to Florida State kind of season where they went 6-6. They lost the bowl game, so they were a notch better, and obviously they won the head-to-head decisively in the second half. But they looked pretty ugly too. Obviously, the Old Dominion loss and some other losses. So I'm not gonna. I knocked him down because of I don't know what I ranked him last year, maybe 4 or 5. I knocked him down based on the performance from last season. But this was a really, really, really young team, and they got hit with just defections and injuries going into 2018 as well. I'm giving him credit for beating Virginia, which was a pretty good football team, and now they've won like 15 straight against Virginia, so that's almost automatic. All right, this is where we're going to disagree. I know it. Scott Satterfield at number 6.
Go on.
I am going to give.
I will let you speak, and then I will respond. Go ahead.
Had he accomplished what he accomplished at Appalachian State, at Kansas State, Stanford, a Power 5 school, sure, I would give him tons more credit, significantly more credit. But where he was placed, his job, he played at a pretty formidable school on the Group of 5 level, probably a top 60 program in FBS, a program that's good enough to be better than a handful of Power 5 teams, typically. So about a top 60 program in the nation. And he's won the Sun Belt Conference Championship 3 consecutive years, 38-10 in the conference. He's known as having a great offensive mind, being a tremendous play caller. I think he's ready for the job, and this is where I'm placing him.
Okay.
And the criticism of that would be
from my side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And this was my argument with, and I think this is the deeper question about ranking, and like you said, how you ranked your list initially right at the end of last season and whatnot. Do I think Scott Satterfield is a bad coach? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. And this means no disrespect towards Group of 5 schools, towards Appalachian State, the Mountaineers, everyone else. To sit there and say somebody who spent his time coaching at Appalachian State, and I'm pulling up right now, he has spent 6 seasons coaching at Appalachian State. To sit here and say that he is miles ahead of somebody who has experience at big Power 5 schools, in Willie Taggart, that is my issue with it. Do I think Scott Satterfield has the potential? Does he have the ability? Yes, and what he did at Appalachian State was very good. Like you said, 3 straight Sun Belt titles. You got the New Orleans Bowl, the Dollar General Bowl, and whatnot. If he can turn Louisville, I'll say this: if he takes Louisville from a 2-10 team to, let's say, 6-6, let's say they're a 500 ball club next year, I will give him all the credit in the world. But to automatically rank him above and very decently above Willie Taggart without him even coaching a down at a Power 5 school yet, that is my issue. And that was my issue all along. My issue with the rankings of the coaches was, and when you first said off camera that you had Willie at 12, below coaches who are first-year coaches in the ACC, that's what got me, is how can you rank somebody who's a first-year coach well ahead of somebody who has experience coaching in the ACC? That was my issue with the rankings. So Scott Satterfield, I'm going to give him all the credit, give him all the respect, but I'm going to also rank him with a grain of very heavy, nice kosher salt. Nice,
okay.
Nice Passover salt that we have on the Passover table. Nice.
Grain of salt.
Yes. It's a
It's
big grain of salt.
a large grain.
Yes.
So just to educate people on how I approach this and how I'll look at it most likely next season would be Scott Satterfield. Okay, Louisville. He walks into a mess. Let's say it's still a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's kind of on a holding pattern and he probably takes it. Let's say they're nearly as bad. He probably drops back because some of the guys behind him probably show a little bit more worth, and then he probably drops back from 6 to 9 or 10, most likely. If he gets anything out of that situation, when you say 6-6, I'm even thinking if he improves by 2 games, if they're a 4-8 team that's competitive in the majority of their conference games, they're losing a lot of, 31-17 games where they're not getting blown off the field, but they're in the game in the second half. I'm going to give a lot of credit to that because this team was just deplorable last year.
They were horrible, and you hit the nail on the head when you say, and you look at their schedule this upcoming season. I mean, you open with Notre Dame. This is a playoff team. Yes, Clemson exposed them in the Cotton Bowl to an extent, but this was a team that was one of the top 4 teams in the country entering the bowl season last year. Then they play East Carolina. They play Eastern Kentucky. Then they play a Western Kentucky team who, I think on athletes alone, I think Louisville can win that game in a close one. Then you have a slate of ACC games that includes at FSU, Boston College, at Wake Forest, Clemson, Virginia, Miami. Your 2 cross-division games this year are Virginia and Miami. Then you got NC State, Syracuse. Then you close the year at Kentucky. So yeah, that's why I would say if he can go 6-6, let's say in a perfect world he can go 6-6, somehow get to 500. I would argue him as one of the top 3 coaches in the ACC. But yeah, realistically, yeah, if he can get, I'll give you that one, Mark Rogers, TV voice of college football. If he can get 2 more wins and be a 4-8 team, I will give him much more credit.
Jason said it. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. This is our live show with Florida State front and center, 7 o'clock every Wednesday night, 7 o'clock Eastern time. So lock it in. It's time to get locked in. College football is right around the corner. We'll have ACC Media Days in about a couple of weeks, right into the open of fall camp. So this is the place to be. Yes, we will answer all your questions. We will jump on it in regards to Boise State previews and positional breakdowns across the field on both sides of the football for Florida State, recruiting, everything. We do it here every week. So if this is one of the first times that you've joined us, either the first time or one of the first times, certainly jump back into the archives there and check out all the videos because we have covered Florida State football top to bottom through 6 weeks now, and we're doing a little ACC survey looking at the coaches. And I got David Cutcliffe at number 5, Jason. I just think if you look at you just have to understand the context of Duke football, where it stands at the university, obviously with a backseat to basketball, which is rare for any Power 5 program. You've got about 5 basketball schools, and then everybody else, it's football first. David Cutcliffe got there for a program that hadn't won a bowl game since the 1961 Cotton Bowl. They hadn't been to a bowl game since 1995. And yeah, it took him a long time to turn this around. So the prior coach, Ted Roof, if you remember Ted Roof.
I do.
Went 4-42. This is what he took over, David Cutcliffe, 4-42. Now, it didn't turn around on a dime. He had his 4-8s and 3-9s, but 67-72 overall, but that's 14 games over 500 the last 5 seasons. Won the Coastal Division Championship, inexplicably to some, 2013. They've been to 6 bowl games in 7 years when they hadn't been to one since 1995. And the guy just, beyond the numbers and the turnaround there at Duke, and they probably hit their ceiling, winning a division championship. And now there's been a lot of 8-5, 7-6s since then. That's probably where they're going to max out. But he's held them there. He's kept them there. I think they went 4-8 a few years ago. But basically, they're going to bowl games every year. And in addition to the record and what he's done there, you just hear great things of David Cutcliffe. He has garnished just a lot of respect in the coaching fraternity.
Yeah, and I think if you look at it, for example, you mentioned how, he has a 67-72 record at Duke, but you're 5 games under 500 total in your time at Duke. but you were 19 games under 500 your first 5 seasons. So look at, like you said, you had the 10-win season in 2013. I'm trying to remember who beat them in the ACC championship. Who blew them out? It was Florida State. That's right. Sorry,
Yeah.
I forgot for a second. But yeah, but you hit the nail on the head, and I had him at number 4 on my list because of that fact of I do give some credence to the fact that he has made Duke a team that is a 9-win team, an 8-win team, which I'm sorry, I grew up in the in the 90s, early 2000s when I was a fan of FSU and later a student there of Duke was homecoming or Duke was the easy first game of the year where you would dominate them by 50 points. That's what Duke football was.
Got 60 folks on the line watching Florida State Seminoles live. We appreciate your support. Yes, I will get to the chat room in just a second. We've got about 15 more minutes on the air. You can help us a number of ways. Of course, you like the videos. So for as many people watching, we should get some likes. We'll have about 2,000-3,000 will watch it eventually. I got 60 on the line right now live. So we appreciate you stopping by. But remember to hit that like button, comment in the live chat, comment afterwards to any of the videos. If you see what we do elsewhere, if you're just a Florida State person, maybe you love college football overall, but you especially love Florida State, well, check out the other videos as well. I'm running through my schedule rankings, 70 all the way up to number 1. I believe Florida State was number 38, if I recall. We're doing position breakdowns of tons of Power 5 teams. We've done close to like 100 videos on position breakdowns, and I'm going to reel in Jason, Logan, some of these guys to help us out on Florida State. So all sorts of position previews, all sorts of previews, and just more than you can imagine. Top 5 SEC quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, top 5 ACC quarterbacks, wide receivers. We've done all this stuff that you got to dive into. Okay. Dave Clawson, I've got at number 4. I'm just amazed at what he's accomplished. And now I'm even rethinking the number 4 ranking I have for him.
You've mentioned Dave Clawson a lot during this 6 weeks. I'm just throwing that out there too.
Wake Forest. He's won 3 straight bowl games.
Mm-hmm.
It's just he takes over an awful program. Jim Grobe made it a decent program at one point, but during the end of his tenure, they were awful. They were winning 3 games. It took him 3 years. They were awful when they started out. Took over a bad program. First 2 years, he's 3-9. Since then, man, he's taken a deplorable offense. They're an exciting offense now. He's been able to recruit offensive players and develop them. Mm-hmm. Go back, anybody who follows football and is kind of a nerd that likes to look at numbers, just go back like 5 years, pull up Wake Forest offensive statistics, game to game, the entire season. It was just, they had running backs running for like 3.2 yards per carry. They just had nothing. And he's won 3 straight bowl games. He's gone 7-6 or 8-5 3 straight years at Wake Forest.
My comeback to that would be, and I ranked him lower, much lower on my list.
Okay.
Grobe led them to an ACC championship, led them to an Orange Bowl, led them to multiple bowl games, multiple winning seasons. Yes, there were some embarrassing losing seasons in that group too, but Wake Forest has always been a team that, and FSU fans will understand this, I use the Chris Ricks theory. Wake Forest would always be the team that would somehow beat, a number 2 Clemson team and then would somehow lose to a bad Duke team back in the early 2000s and the 90s. That they were always a hot and cold team. That would be the best way to describe Wake Forest. So that's why I don't give Clawson all the credit in the world, because you're talking about the last 3 years, those 3 bowls, the only reason they're above 500 is because of bowl wins. 2 7-6 seasons and an 8-5 season. I'll give you the 8-5 season, big bowl win over Texas A&M. I'll give you that much, but I need more from him before I up him much higher on the list.
All right. I've got him at number 4, and I'm going to guess, Jason, that if we went down through Wake Forest history during the time frame that you're talking about, I can't imagine that they were beating number 2 ranked teams in the country very often.
I was just
if ever.
Example. I was using an example. I'm still mad about 2006 when they shut us out in Tallahassee. Still mad about that. Still PTSD.
Okay, here's another guy I'm high on.
Okay.
Bronco Mendenhall at number 3.
I agree with that one.
At BYU, okay, what's BYU been since he left? They finally got back to a bowl game and went 7-6 this past year. They've been winning like 3, 4, 5 games since he left.
Mm-hmm.
He comes to Virginia. They hadn't been to a bowl game in 10 or 11 years. He gets to a bowl game his second season. The first season, again, I leave some leeway for adjustment.
Okay.
I know I didn't necessarily do that with Willie, but he's got top 15 talent, number one, and number two, just the team didn't look prepared. But you see a lot of good coaching stints from some of the top coaches when they take over a bad program or a program that's been down, and you see where that first season the record doesn't increase much, but the team just plays much better. So Bronco Mendenhall had his 2-10 out of the gate at Virginia, but he was changing things. Then he wins 6 and gets to a bowl game. And then this past season, 8-5, they win a bowl game. They beat an SEC team, South Carolina, 28-0 in the bowl game. And again, if you look back at BYU, during his time, they were ranked many of those seasons. They were like a top 25 type program at that point. He went 99-43 at BYU, and they haven't touched that since. So again, the jury's still out in Virginia, but the signs at this point are really good.
If if they can do anything close to what they did this past year, I think you could easily see them in Charlotte winning the Coastal Division. I think they can. They, I believe, have the talent. That's a scary game. I think before Clemson, that to me is the one game that scares me the most as an FSU fan covering the team. That I can see that being the most likely that FSU loses before they play Clemson this year.
I have Miami fans get on here almost on a daily basis and laugh at my warning about Virginia. And I'm not saying Virginia's going to win or win the division. They do have to travel to Miami, but where fan bases get off making fun of a program that just beat you the previous season and won one more game, I don't really understand that logic.
At the risk of starting World War III with Miami fans, so I will say that there are FSU fans who are like it too. There's a decent amount of fans, and you know this covering college football, that are still living in the 90s, living in the 2000s. There are people who expect everything to just be like it used to be, and it's not. College football is a different animal. It's not Florida State, Florida, Miami, Notre Dame, USC, Alabama, and then a bunch of other schlubs down there. Duke can beat an FSU. Baylor can beat Oklahoma. Anything can happen. This is where we are at right now.
Talking college football, he's here each and every Wednesday night. Florida State at 7 o'clock, Miami at 8, Ohio State at 9, all Eastern time. We got Jason Parker on the line. Join him at Chop Chat. What have you been carving up there at Chop Chat here recently, Jason?
Chop Chat, we are in the month of July, so we are going through our how do we get to football season soon section of the month. Today we talk about a certain member of the sports media who took a shot at Willie Taggart, so we responded to that a little bit. Also, on the recruiting side, we talk about how could FSU get lucky in a 4-star offensive line target, Isaiah Walker, who's from South Florida, from Miami Norland High School, who recently decommitted from South Carolina. He's been a big target of FSU of late. Obviously, Florida and Miami have also been looking at him. So can Florida State end up getting there? And then also how the FSU baseball team could be in a rebuilding cycle entering next season under Mike Martin Jr. That's our latest stuff on ShopChat.com.
All right. Good stuff. Lock it in there. Lock it in here. Florida State fans, college football fans, we deliver the best in discussion, debate, and analysis each and every day. Check out the videos. We've posted more than 8,000, and we post them every day, 4 or 5, and we are getting you set for 2019. Also, you can contribute by joining the Super Chat right here. Contribute there. Also, the Amazon link is in the description section below. So 71 people on the line right now. A couple thousand are going to watch this. I'm guessing some of you, I'm just guessing based on what I've heard about this Amazon outfit, that you shop at Amazon. You can grab the link in the description section. Your Amazon experience does not change in any way, but you help contribute to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And you can also grab the link that you see down below where it says Voice of College Football Community. Grab that link, and you can join me for 2 exclusive live streams each and every week. One in which I respond to your viewer comments, which total more than 40,000 this year. So thank you for the big response. That's up from about, I was looking at this the other day because we just hit the first 6 months of course, 2019. So about 40-some thousand compared to like 16,000 at this point last year. So thank you for the comments just flooding in. And then on top of that, I respond to your viewer comments. The other live stream, I bring you on to talk college football with me. So the vision here is that we rotate 3 or 4 of you all the time to come on, talk college football with me. How can you beat that, Jason? You can jump on, talk to the voice of college football.
I'm here every Wednesday, so
I know you've got your spot.
I would not have a chance to talk to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.
Yeah, I don't know how you got to be so privileged, but it's just the luck of the draw, I guess.
I responded to your Twitter. I'm not sure.
That's right. That's right. It's been good stuff here with Jason each and every week. He's joined us all 6 weeks. This is our 6th edition. We got Logan Robinson most of the time from Knoll Game Day, Big James Coleman. We'll see if we can reel James back in here, and we'll finish out our ACC coaches list here because I think this is where we're going to hit a snag, a major snag.
You've got Dabo at number 2, right? No, you don't have that.
So this gentleman has been off the scene for a few years. We've seen him with makeup on in the studio, and he's got a few years behind him, which there's the track record.
If you say Mack Brown is the number 1 coach in the ACC, so help me God.
Mack Brown would be number 2.
I was hoping that you did not even rank him at number 1.
No.
All right.
But you take exception to number 2 as well.
I take mass exception because he is a first-year coach. I get the critics are, you coached at North Carolina before. It's his first time back at this stint. I have a problem with him, especially because of the fact that he has not coached on the sideline since 2013. I think that goes back to how you say Miami fans in the message room, FSU fans, constantly living in the past. People who think just because he's coming back to North Carolina that you're going to have the same type of coach, the same type of team for the Tar Heels that they had in '97 when they were a top 5 team before he left to go to Texas. It's not going to happen. It's not, and I'm sorry, and it's not me being critical towards anyone in Chapel Hill to think that he is going to be the same coach that was in there 2 decades ago. I personally think is crazy.
And I'm not a big Mack Brown supporter. I thought near the end of his tenure at Texas that he got a little lazy and he lost his energy in the recruiting wars, and they slipped. They certainly slipped. But, man, we got to see what Charlie Strong, who had been extremely successful at Louisville, what he was not able to do with the same players and then not able to replenish the roster at the same rate as Mack Brown. So let's keep a few things in mind. Mm-hmm. Yes, I am rating this on the here and now. So I try to, but you know how complex this can become when you start to rate and rank and you try to hold to certain guidelines. But then you've got a coach who is very, very well respected and very, very accomplished. Come back onto the scene. Now, this is not a Herm Edwards situation where he hasn't stepped on a football field for 12 or 13 years. 6 years, 2013. Okay. It's been a while, but it's not like he coached the wing T. He dealt with basically the same generation and the same style football. It has changed a bit, but I'm going to trust in Mack Brown's ability to run a program, and more so than actually know the nuts and bolts and the X's and O's on the field, but run the program. And if you look at what he accomplished in North Carolina, so prior to Mack Brown, marginal, he finished ranked in his last 6 seasons at North Carolina and 6 seasons at North Carolina 5 times. Think about North Carolina being ranked like consistently every year, twice in the top 10 in the nation. Just that's tough to pin it. Even that Mitchell Trubisky team with all that talent finished 8-5. They didn't come anywhere close to being ranked that high. He finished top 10 twice at North Carolina. Then he goes to Texas. And sure, it's easy to say Texas talent. Obviously, anybody can win there. Well, not everybody can win there because they weren't winning before he got there. They hadn't won a national championship since the early 70s, somewhere around 69 or 70. And that had been forever, 25 years. He wins a national championship. He gets to another national championship game to back up that wasn't a fluke. He was in the conversation for a national championship consistently year after year after year after year.
And I'll say this real quick. I think
finished in the top 10 6 times.
If Colt McCoy doesn't get hurt, I think they beat Alabama in 2009. I'll say it right now. I think that.
I believe so too. That was so people look at the final score, 37-21. 24-21 game, 5 minutes left. Won the national championship. And again, just compare the winning percentages before and after, not at one program, at 2 major programs. It's drastic.
My comeback to that, and we can wrap things up with these guys on this one because obviously there's no need to talk about Dabo. We know Dabo's sweetie. He's the best coach right now, I think, in college football. My argument with Mac Brown would be, I get where you're coming from. My comeback to that would be, he's going to be coaching guys this year who were in 6th grade the last time he coached on a football field, who many of them, if not all of them, weren't even getting looks, weren't even thought of as, oh, I'm going to play college football yet the last time this man coached a college football game. That would be my argument why, once again, I don't put new coaches. I think that all 4 new coaches in the ACC, Mac Brown, Scott Satterfield, Manny Diaz, and Jeff Collins, must start at the bottom. Once again, just my opinion, must start at the bottom because they have not shown yet what they can do. If Mac Brown comes in this year, yes, I think he's a great leader, former Florida State football player. But what if they go in this year and he's a 2-10 coach? Yes, I think he was a great leader at North Carolina in the 90s. I think he was a great leader at Texas in the first part of the 2000s. But that does not, to me, translate into what he is going to do this time around in the second go-around. Now, I will throw something at you, Mark Rogers, TV and voice of college football, because during your rankings, you talked about Justin Fuente, who I think is a very good coach at Virginia Tech, and you talked about his time at Memphis, and you gave him credit for that. What does Willie Taggart have to do?
Didn't we talk about this last week? Go ahead.
What does he have to do to move up from 12th on your list?
Well, it's a fluid list. There are other components. It's not rated in a vacuum. I was ranking him from 0 to 100, and I said he's a 55, then he could do something to be a 58 or an 85 or whatever next year. So there's fluidity. There's guys. So that taken into context, again, I get your point. What does he have to do to move up? I think Florida State.
Item number 5, what does he have to do to move up, in your mind, to be one of the top 5 coaches in the ACC?
I think Florida State, if you take a capable football coach, if we had God come down and he said, you got 130 teams in FBS, here's your 65th ranked football coach, the average guy who's capable. And I said this last week. I think most of these guys are very capable. Right. So in some leagues, I'm ranking guys 11th, 12th that I think are good coaches. Okay. So these guys know what they're doing. That's why they get paid a lot of money, and it's tough to keep these jobs. I think that Florida State, they do have a difficult schedule. They've got the 2 really tough non-conference games, Florida, Boise State. Most teams don't play 2 very difficult Power 5 teams. Of course, have to take on Miami out of division. What's the other non-division game?
Virginia.
Yes. Yeah, you just said that. So they most likely play the 2 best teams in the other division. Difficult schedule. All right. I think this is against all things being equal, even schedule. This is an 8-4 team. If he goes 8-4, I'm going to basically say that's a capable showing. That's It's not outstanding. Now, if they go 8-4 and Florida beats them on a last-second field goal, and they're this close that they are playing really good, that could be different. Yeah, they're competitive with Clemson. They only they lose a respectable game, 31-20 or something like that. Yeah, and then I'm like, yeah, I always put the record into context. That's kind of where I think they are, athletically, talent wise.
So
Yes.
8 wins or more is what you think Willie has to do this season, leading the Seminoles.
If he goes more than 8-4, then I'm going to give him credit.
Okay.
And then you throw the bowl game in there, depending on who they play and where they are and so forth. Yeah, that's kind of my barometer. I think this is an 8-4 team.
Then I will leave you with this. I would think you will be pleasantly surprised with what FSU football will do this season. And we'll talk more in the coming weeks, but I think you will be pleasantly surprised with this team this season. I truly believe that. I'm not just saying this as an FSU grad or anything else. I legitimately can see this team, if you include the bowl game, possibly having double-digit wins by the time the season's up.
Well, I will say I'm not pleasantly surprised, but I am pleased with our show through 6 weeks here. We got Jason Parker on the line from Chop Chat. He's joined us each and every week. For those of you joining us for the first time, we usually have a panel of a few of us on the line. Logan Robinson from Knoll Game Day, Big James Coleman, a former FSU player at Fifth Quarter College Football. So we invite you in each and every week, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Please, again, let other people know that we're here. Get on social media. Let folks know. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, 7 o'clock on every Wednesday night right here, and join Jason on Chop Chat. So in future weeks, we're going to run through positions. We're going to talk about whatever is newsworthy, obviously, if there are late-breaking stories. But other than that, we're going to dive through these position rankings, or positions, I should say, position previews on the Florida State team, and look at this Boise State game. And then once we hit camp, we'll get some news, certainly, and we'll respond to that each and every week.
Can you send me a list of this stuff? I didn't know I'd have homework. Good Lord.
You got homework.
Oh God, man, come on.
But with you, it's not homework. It's all just streams right out.
I mean, I may already have the sheets and stuff already done, so it's okay.
Yeah, that's right. You got that other thing going over, that Chip Chat, Chop Tam.
Wow. That's fire.
Got that going. Chop Chat. So you hear what Jason brings here. Get more from him and the rest of the staff there at Chop Chat. Thank you so much, Jason. It's always a good time.
Sir, take it easy. See you next Wednesday.
We'll see you. Everybody, we've got Miami football coming at 8 o'clock Eastern time. In 1 minute, I better shut this down and get the other link out there. So just keep it right here on the front page of YouTube. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Miami is coming up next.